Hi, this is Udi, and welcome to Pigments by Arturia session. And this session is going to be an overview, and in the next sessions, I'm going to dive deeper into all the options. So stay tuned. Let's get started. So this is a very exciting tool, and I really like it. It has a lot of options, and it has a lot of ways for you to modulate, change, and create your sounds. And you'll understand that, I think, by the end of this tutorial. So let's get started. What do we have here? So the main panel here, what we're seeing is, this is the synth view. So we see the synth engines, you see the filters, and we see the modulators here, and we have the tabs for the different modulators. But when you change to FX, the upper part is changing for the effects, and you can see bus A, bus B, ascend bus, and when you select the sequencer, which is actually a sequencer slash arpeggiator, then you see all the controls for that. So again, synth, FX, sequencer, they change the top part here. What's not changing is the middle part and the bottoms here. So let's understand how this synth works by exploring the engines and exploring the filters and so on. So you have two engines here, and they can play together, or you can just select one of them, either engine 1 or engine 2. You can switch them on and off, and you can select, for each one of them, you can select the type, either an analog, virtual analog, or a wavetable. And it's good to know that Arturia took their 20 years plus experience in the field of synthesis and modulating or emulating different synthesizers, and they combined all that knowledge to create pigments. But they also added their wavetable here, which is a more modern and more flexible type of synthesis, and we'll explore that in a moment. So I think what would make a lot of sense is to just hear out and have a look what exactly is going on when we're selecting the very basic settings here. Let's go to the default. We'll take a template, default. It actually sounds very good even in the default. And you can see that this is a wavetable, and you have 2D and 3D modes. If we go to the 3D, you can see that's the waves, all the wave shapes are spread, and you can just select the position here. But we'll go back to that in a moment. Engine 2, we'll select it. It's a normal, usual analog type of synthesis, and you have 3 different oscillators. And these oscillators can be, any of the basic shapes. And you can sync oscillator 1 to oscillator 2. And you also have oscillator 3 that can be separated of the first 2. And so you have 3 oscillators, which is already awesome. Now, what else? All the sound that you create with the oscillators will go into the output to the filters. And you have a couple of filters here. You have filter 1 and filter 2. And you can turn them on and off very easily here. And you can switch between them. You can just flip them. And with this knob, with the filter mix knob, you can just select how much of each filter would you like to have. Would you like to have 100% filter 1, maybe 100% filter 2, or anything in between? And also you have some volume here to attenuate the sound that goes into the filters, because the filter themselves might add more volume here, more gain, and so you might want to start off a little bit, behind, and then work with the filters. So that's the idea here of the output. You also have noise, and you also have modulations. You can modulate all kinds of things here in this synthesizer, but in the analog you have that option. When you go to engine 1 here, which I selected with the wavetable, you can see that you have a lot of options to modulate the waveforms, and we'll get to that later. So that said, we have another very cool thing here, which is the tuning. So this is the normal tuning. You can go between 60 semitones up and down, and you also have a fine, which goes between -1 and +1 semitones. And by the way, double clicking will get you back to the default. And you have a drift. The drift means that we're sort of emulating some analog behavior. You'll see that the sound just goes detuned. Double click, goes back to 0. But we also have a quantized knob here, or a button. You click that, and you click this tool, mode quantize, and you see some sort of a keyboard layout, right? That's the black keys and the white keys. What it means is that this will lock the tuning to selected notes, and you can set up a scale. Just we can just select all the whites. That's major, C major. You can select anything else. You can select something else. And how it works, let's hear it. And I think what would be a good example is, and also a good experience here, is to modulate the tuning. So let's just select the plus here, and you can see that this plus is just everywhere. You can find it on any of the parameters. So we'll just select the plus, and let's take, for example, function 1. And again, in later tutorials, I'll explain in more detail what the functions are, LFOs, and all the other modulators. So I'll just selected function 1. If you want to see how function 1 looks like, we go to functions here in the tab, and we see it just goes down here. And so let's hear it. And I can change the shape of this function. Very, very nice. So you can see that the idea of the quantize can be very useful, because if you want to stay in tune in the key, in your scale, then that's the way to go. Very, very useful. What else? So let's now explore the wavetable. And when you go to the wavetable, first of all, you can select wavetable. Second, you can select from all these already pre-loaded wavetables. I can just double click here, and you see the selection. And the way wavetable works is that you have a selection of you have a list of wave forms, and you can just go in between all these waveforms. And I think what again would make sense, and that's exactly what people do, is modulate the position. So I can just click here and say, okay,
you will be modulated by LFO1. So I'll just select LFO1. I'll go to LFO1 and I just want to see what's going on here. And I can say, okay, that's way too fast. Let's just, take it slower. And I can change the root position here. Right. And you can see that the dot here doesn't go all the way. And the reason is because LFO1 is set to, 0.29. I'll go all the way. It will go all the way. I'll go down. It will be actually the opposite direction, but doesn't matter because it's circular. So I'll just go something like that, and let's hear it. Right, so this is the position. And when you select the position, you can stay in one place, or you can just you can play with that, modulate that. But you can also you can select anything else. You can say, okay, let's take, I don't know, binary, and go to random here, and you'll see that you have a binary. It's either on or off, and you have probability. So there are a lot of ways to manipulate and to modulate the engines here, the wavetable. So go back, double click, and that's it. So going back to our wavetable. So that's the main wavetable idea here. Again, you have filter mix, you have the volume as before, but what you have here is also all kinds of modulators, and you can modulate the waveform that you have here. Let's go to 2D, and let's see what happens when we are playing with these modulators, and I will explain more about them in future sessions. So let's have a look. So you have frequency modulation, phase distortion, wave folding. Very cool. And last option here with the wavetable is, for me, it's very, very useful. So we have the classic unison, which means that we are adding more voices. And we have detune, and we have stereo spread. But we also have a chord mode. And that means that Pigments can create chords for you, right, without any effort at all. So you select the chord here. This is an octave. And I can select fifth, minor 7, 9. Nice. And so moving on to the effects. So we have two buses. We have bus A and bus B, and a send bus. And you can control the amount of bus A, bus B, and the send bus here on the right. And you have a return. And let's try and see exactly what's going on here. So when I select bus A, I have 3 slots here. And you can see that we already have a delay and we have a phaser. And I can just change the phaser into distortion. And you can see that I have here the bus A selector. So you can see the drive goes in. You can see the delay. I can just turn it off. And bus B doesn't have anything. I can just select, let's say, flanger and introduce it. It doesn't sound very good, but you get the idea. And then we have a send bus. So this is the send bus, and again you have 3 slots, and you can see that we already have a reverb here, but you can change that to anything else. So I think that's the basic idea. And then we have a sequencer. The sequencer is either an arpeggiator or a classic sequencer. When you go to the arpeggiator, you can select the modes. I'll just select a different, let's take something else, not the usual template. Let's take whatever key, and piano. And I'll cover that in a later tutorial. So that's the idea here. And I think that pretty much concludes the main functions of the synthesizer. And I hope this was useful and beneficial for you. So stay tuned for our next session, where I explore the engines in greater detail and explore the filters in greater detail, and all the functions and all the routing options that we have. Thank you.